website name, your author name. Let's see if it goes to there. Are we sharing that now?
Yep.
PowerPoint slide there. Okay. So we're talking about your website name, which doesn't necessarily have to be the website name. It's just a domain name, also called a URL, which is like a universal something. I Googled it earlier, but I forgot what it stands for. So, but it's a domain name. And we're going to talk about the importance of your author domain name and why you should have one or two or three or more, and some do's and don'ts in choosing your name, and where you can get the domain name, and more. So we're going to be throwing in our tidbits. So when we were batting around what to talk about tonight, this is something that we have been talking with authors for years. And in fact, it's something that Darlene has pretty much embedded in her conversation that she has with authors. You know, one of the first conversations that she has with authors, telling our story and about, you know, what we did and didn't do and all that fun stuff. And one of the things that she's always brought up is talking about the domain name and why it's so important. And that's been kind of like an extra value thing that we've done for years, just encouraging the authors, whether they work with us or not, encouraging the authors to get that domain name, lock it in, secure it. So those are the things we're going to be covering here this evening. And so you want to kick it off, hon?
Oh, sure. Okay, so first off, I do want to say that, oh, never mind. We'll move right into this. So why do you want to secure your domain name immediately? So if I'm speaking with someone, sharing, and those of you on here have heard this and can attest to the fact that while we are chatting, one of the things that I bring up in that initial phone call is you getting your domain name and securing that domain name. The reason is if you do not, and your book comes out, and then you go to get it, someone will have already bought it. So they will take your domain name. They will take, say darlingshortridge.com. If I didn't own that, someone else would, and they would try to sell it back to me for thousands of dollars. I don't know how they know, but when a new book comes out, it's like someone's just sitting there checking books or something. I don't know. There's got to be some system that they use, but we've had it happen. We've had it happen to authors where they did not go and secure that domain name for 99 cents or $1.99 or $2.99, whatever it is. It's cheap, okay? There's no reason not to get it. And so they go to get it after their book is published and someone's trying to sell it back to them. And they're like, what do I do? And I'm like, should have got that when I asked you to. It's like, even if you don't plan on using it for a year or 2 years, it's just important. There are scammers in every area of life these days. And this is just another one. It's just another way. So very, very important that you get your domain name, or someone else will if you do not.
Absolutely. So, and one of the reasons why you want to get your domain name is that then you are able to control it, and so you tell it where to go and what to do, and what that means is that the domain name is not necessarily just for your website. So you can have a domain name that points to or directs somebody to something else. It can point them or direct them to your website or a page on the website, but it could also send them to a Facebook profile that you set up. It could send them to a landing page that you are hosting on some type of online software like MailChimp or MailerLite or Aweber or something like that. It could send them to a YouTube video that you've created, or a YouTube channel that you've created. It can also redirect them to a different site. And when we get into talking about names and variations of names, we're going to touch on this. So the website, or I should say the domain name, because there's a difference. Now we start talking about terminology. Your domain name is that address that you see up in the search bar at the top of your Chrome window. So we're gonna hop over there here for just a minute so we can look at that. We'll go to the full screen and minimize that here. And so we're just going to go to the search. Oh, let me just open a search window. So up here, can we see the top of my my Chrome?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so up here there's a search bar, and then that's where you can put in. Now you can actually search in Chrome. You can search for search terms. So like I had searched for URL earlier that I said I was looking up what does it stand for, Uniform Resource Locator. So you can do a search in Google for things, or you can search for a specific domain name. So www. Where's my dot? DarleneShortridge.com. And notice with website names, they are not case sensitive. So they can be upper or lowercase, doesn't matter in a website name. Same with email addresses. They are not case sensitive. Okay. So we do a search for www.darleneshortridge.com, and we click the return, and the search comes up here and it gives the results of the search. If we do that same, I'm going to copy that. If we go right to the search bar and we put that in, it's going to go ahead and take us directly to the website. So when we're talking about domain names, this is what we're talking about, is that right there, that DarleneShortridge.com. That's a domain name, also known as a URL, and it can be the name of your website. So in this case, that is the name of Darlene's website, is DarleneShortridge.com. Now we do have another one that's DarleneShortridge.net. N-E-T. So if we put that in and it says, oh, that's not secure, we'll have to figure out why. But if I do the advanced here on Google Chrome and then let's say proceed to DarleneShortridge.net, says it's unsafe, but it redirects. So that's what we say, that's a redirect. So you could have 50 different website names that all redirect back to the same website. So that's why we encourage. I see that Kimberly Blaine's here with us this evening. So recently set up a website for her that is her pen name, ElaineBrown.com there, and that takes you to the website, ElaineBrown.com. But we also reserve the name Elaine Brown Books.com, and if you put that in, does the same thing that other one did. Said it wasn't advanced, not secure. But if we go there anyway, ElaineBrownBooks.com, then it redirects back to ElaineBrown.com. So that's a redirect. Okay, so those are all things you can do when you own the name, when you own the domain name. Now, if you purchase the name and you don't have direct access to it, you're asking for trouble. So we'll circle back around to that here in just a little bit about why you should not only own the name, but you should have it registered where you can directly access the settings for it. So, but let's move on to the next section of the presentation, which is choosing a name. All right, Hun, are you there?
I am. I was just letting the dog in.
Okay. And yeah, if you want to kick off with that first one, that's a big one.
Okay. So basically, you've got a lot of choices when it comes to domain names. And as authors, we're pretty straightforward. For fiction writers, generally speaking, if you go to stephenking.com, you go to Stephen King's website. If you go to, whatever fiction writer you may be reading. If you go to a nonfiction writer, sometimes if you put in, say, Robert Kiyosaki, if you put in richdadpoordad.com, it's going to take you to his site because that is a really well-known brand. So he has that as a website. But I'm guessing, and maybe I could do some screen share here. I'm guessing though, if we put in his name, it'll take us to the same website. So fiction writers usually use their names because, like, I can tell you, I know who Stephen King is. If I saw Stephen King, I could probably point him out. But I can't tell you maybe one, I know one, maybe two of his titles, okay? But I recognize his name. And that's what fiction writers are doing, is they're branding their name. Because hopefully as a fiction writer, you're gonna write lots of books. So when I first started out, I went ahead and named my Facebook page Until Forever, which is the name of my first book. When I released book 2, I realized I had made an error. That I shouldn't have done that. And I was like, what am I going to do? Have 10 Facebook pages with titles on them? That just doesn't make sense. So I sent an email to Facebook and got it switched and got it to my name. But I think they make it a lot easier these days to change the name. But back then, it was a while ago. It was tough to get them to change the name from Until Forever and merge all my followers and everything else to the correct name. So that's really what you want them to look at, is book title or series title. It could be a series title or author name, depending on whether you write fiction or nonfiction. And I'll just go down here just to branding real quick too. It's very important that the branding follows you wherever you go. So we're in the midst of a website redo for me. I really like a lot of aspects of my website, but Jana has been working on the branding. She has company this week, visitors from out of town, so she's not going to be here. So now that, I've got my new headshots and, that picture on my website's old. And so anyway, so it's time to update all of that and make everything flow together. So
and we got new software to go with it too. So
and new software. So, but the point of this is your website grows with you. And as long as you are cohesive, that branding is following you from your social media platforms, your website, LinkedIn, any social media whatsoever, sorry, there, stop it. All right. Okay, guys. All right. We all just need to move, I think. Okay. So anyway,
dogs out.
yeah, I don't even know what I was thinking. So anyway, but that branding, it needs to remind people of who you are on a regular basis, wherever they're finding you. Okay. So, and that's the point of branding. It's so they recognize your name no matter where they're at. And it's always just this reminder of who you are and what you do. So that's the point of branding. So it's like,
so I saw one email that said we had to renew to maintain ownership of it. Is that correct?
If you get an email like that, Kimberly, send it to Dan.
Okay.
Don't click on anything.
Okay.
I even got a text from AT&T. Oh, your bill is paid. Click here. You won a prize. And I'm like, yeah, right. Don't click on anything anymore.
Yeah. Talk about domain names. That's where you scrutinize everything that comes in. All the emails, all those texts, even Facebook messages and stuff. Really take a double look before you click on stuff ever. Double check, the source and where it's coming from. Because so many of those are so obvious. Like we get those text messages to, hey, your AT&T bill's been paid. and we got some great news for you. Click here, and it's like some weird domain name. It's like whatever. It's just weird looking. It's like that's a red flag right away. So
yeah. So Kimberly,
yeah.
your domain name is not that old. So Hun, I don't know if you were letting the dog out, but anyway, she got a email talking about how she had to renew it. And I told her just forward that to you because it's not that old.
Yep, that's another scammy tactic that happens. You'll get letters in the mail as well as the emails saying that if they'll do it for like renewing your domain name. Just do it through them, and it's always 3, 4, 10 times as much as what it would cost you to do it right through the service you're using. There's also scams for marketing your website. It's special. I get letters all the time because we've got, I don't know, 30 domain names, so we get them all the time. But yeah, just be wary of it. Know where your stuff is registered. So, and like with you, Kim, like your 2 domain names are registered with GoDaddy. So you have a GoDaddy account and you have 2 domain names registered with them, and that's it. And to renew those, it's going to run you about $18 a piece in a year. A year from when we registered them, whenever that was. So, and that will come in. The renewal will come into your author email that we set up for you. So. Yeah, but any question on that specifically, shoot it to us and ask. Happy to field that stuff for you.
Okay. So Hun, do you want me to keep going here for a little bit?
Yeah, I don't know where you left off. So.
All right. So we were talking about branding and how important it is to be cohesive across the board with your branding. So that starts with your social media, your Facebook, and on and on. So printed materials. I mean, you're talking anything that you do, it should just reinforce who you are. So use the same logo, the same way you write your name, whatever it is, just keep it all cohesive. Short and sweet. So have you seen those websites? I hate my ex and want to beat him up.com. Just stupid stuff. You've seen just crazy things. And sometimes they're a little out there. I remember seeing those big boards that people would put that on, just when they're trying to embarrass someone or something. But what you want to do is you want to keep it short and sweet. And the reason is so people remember it. The easier it is for them to remember, the better. I'm trying to think, we've done a few websites where, initials are used, that's fine. But you want to keep it just short and sweet. So I use Darlene Shortridge. I know that that's longer than, most last names, but it's super easy to remember and say. So, anyway, so next is Dan, go ahead.
So easy to pronounce and spell. This kind of it just reminds what we were just talking about. Reminds us of the story of using of what name to use for Darlene when we first were publishing her first book was because Darlene's real name or her married name, her legal name is Darlene Mulwinning. So she took my last name when we got married. So that's her legal name, but her maiden name is Shortridge. And so that's what we decided to go with was, now she does use another name, another pen name. It's Lily York. So, so there are times I feel like I'm married to 3 different women, but we decided to use Darlene Shortridge for her pen name to start off with because of the fact that it's very, it's easy to pronounce, it's easy to spell. Most everybody knows how to spell Darlene. They assume it's Darlene. That is an assumption of most people. And then Shortridge So it's just like Darling Short Ridge. So it's very easy to deliver. Now we said Starling Mall Winnie. I mean, with that name's been butchered all kinds of different ways, since I was a kid. So we knew that we didn't want to be promoting that because it's simply for marketing purposes. So you want to think of that also with your domain name as well.
Mhm.
So
So now, and you have to kind of roll with the punches on that as well. So when we're at events and I'm speaking, oftentimes Dan will be approached as Mr. Shortridge, and he just smiles and and answers the question. So so that kind of comes with the territory.
It's a joint bank account, so it doesn't matter. So yeah.
So I know I used a pen name for my own personal reason, but
Yeah.
what is the point or the benefit of what you did by having so many? I mean, I know the one is your name, but then what made you want to do
Lily York?
Yeah.
Okay, the reason I chose to use another pen name is because that's a completely different genre. So by the time I started writing cozy mysteries, I had 6 of my Women of Prayer series done, and I had readers from around the world. So if I put out a book under Darling Shortridge, all of those readers would rush to buy that book. And when they got it, they would see that it's not the same style of book that I had been writing under Darling Shortridge. So I wrote it, yeah, it's totally different. Now, mind you, it's clean and all that, so they wouldn't have had any complaints, but it's not Christian based. It is simply clean whodunits, kind of like Murder, She Wrote. So it's a very different genre than my Women of Prayer series. So in order to help my readers differentiate which genre what was in, and I do have crossover readers, I do. But it makes it real easy for them to know if it says Lily York, it's a mystery. If it says Darling Shortridge, it's a modern day contemporary Christian fiction book.
I have a question about that. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Because I had written that down because I too have a pen name, which you can see it there, Angea. And I was wondering, you were talking about how when you get your domain name, then you have redirect everything. How would you redirect your pen name? Would you just set it do you have a separate one for your pen name that then it redirects to your Shortridge website?
Correct.
Okay.
I have lilyyork.com net or whatever, however many, I don't know. I don't know how many domain names, but yes, and I have both of my genres of books on my website, but I also own lilyyork.com to simply direct people to my website. So it's not something I'm trying to hide. It's just, yeah. And that's exactly what I do. So I own both.
But the other question I had, I just got a message that says my internet service is unstable. Anyway, okay, we go back to the branding. Okay. Now, how does that fit in with that? Because when you do write in different genres, which I also write nonfiction as well as a fiction, how does that all come together? Do you need a domain name for every, like the different genres and the different way we write?
Well, for me, my main brand is Darling Shortridge. Okay. Lily York is an offshoot. So I don't really necessarily rebrand a Lily York and try to, it's just part of my Darling Shortridge package. Okay. So while we do have a certain look, because that's what industry standard covers look like, and that kind of thing, it's still not branding me. My brand is Darling Shortridge. I'm an author. I'm a ghostwriter. I'm a publisher. That's my brand. Overreaching brand.
Okay.
So,
all right.
Yeah.
So, okay. So the next one on the list there was no hyphens or double letters. And this is funny because just earlier today, we were looking at a few things that actually kind of contradicted that. There's some of them that said, yeah, get the ones that got the hyphens in them too. That's just to have the extra names to cover your bases, and which will kind of cover here. But for your main domain name, so this is what we're really talking about, is your main domain name. These are kind of like some some things to keep in mind for that main name. It's like, what is the main thing that you want to brand and promote in this? So,
Yeah. So
again, going back to the Darlene Shortridge example, that's the main name there.
exactly. And so, and what Dan was saying is like no hyphens or double letters. It should be short and sweet. This right here, what we're sharing right now, is for your main name. So like ElaineBrown.com right there. That is short, sweet, to the point. Okay. So, but there are things that you can do to protect yourself, to protect your business, to protect your brand. And we'll talk about those things in a little bit.
Yeah, on the next slide. So, and then the last one on this one, using keywords. This is more so for like a nonfiction writer where you could incorporate it into your brand. So brand that I wrote, something I wrote was called Tips on Tips, and it is basically it's instructional teaching for restaurants to use to train their servers, and it's specifically it's the psychology of serving. And so that was my concern, was to brand the name of Tips on Tips, and it was a title that also used the keywords. So keywords were incorporated right into the domain name. Mm-hmm. In that case, keywords. So Darlene mentioned Robert Kiyosaki with Rich Dad Poor Dad. I know the site is the one that I've been on is richdad.com. So there's keywords that are from the title buried right into the domain name. So it makes for good SEO, which we're not going to get into even talking about SEO. That's a whole different animal. That's a pretty deep subject. But so that's some things to keep in mind in choosing a name. So what's next? Domains, do's and don'ts.
Okay. And this is where you want to domain strategize. And basically what that means is, for instance, like one of the samples that we have is Nike. So Nike.com, right? Everyone knows Nike, the little symbol, the little what all. Well, what if you happened upon a site that says Nikes.com or NikePlus.com and they're selling sportswear? So what Nike is, being a very big company with a lot of money, they trademarked, they protected their domain, they protected their name, Nike, and no version of that can be used. If they find someone that's using that domain, they can get it pulled down. Okay. Most of us don't have that, right? I haven't trademarked Darlene Shortridge. It's my name. I haven't trademarked it. But there are things that I can do to help protect my brand, to help protect my business, help protect my name. And that is to get multiple variations of my domain. And that's where we talk about some of those rules on the first slide don't come into play for your main, but they do come into play when you're protecting your brand, when you're protecting your domain name. And so like when we first started out, we owned darleneshortridge.com, .net, .biz, .org, .us or whatever, however many it was, that we owned them. And there are things that you can do for like adding a hyphen. So like maybe Darlene hyphen, if it was a brand, my name I'm not too worried about, but say Tips on Tips, it could be tips on tips, just to protect it. Because if that brand takes off and it's huge, someone could try to emulate and take business away from Tips on Tips by adding in hyphens and getting people to go there, thinking it's the real thing. Okay. So what they're saying is while it's cheap, you can buy all the variations, suffixes, and of versions of your domain name to protect you and your brand.
We'll show an example. I'm going to go into our GoDaddy account and I'm going to show you an example of buying variations of a name. So you'll see that here in just a minute. So
Okay.
Gonna,
Anyway, so the main thing is to protect you, protect your message, protect your intellectual property by strategizing your domain names.
yeah. So highly encourage getting multiple names, multiple variations of the domain names, and but have one that's the main one. You know, have your main one, and then have all these other ones either support it, going to like supporting you know, sub pages that are part of the website, or just having them redirect to the main site.
Yeah. Well, and one thing, it's like Author Underground, for instance. When we got Author Underground, so we own the website, and obviously we have the name here, but we own authorunderground.com. We own Underground Author. We own, I mean, we just own a big variety of names that use those words in some way, shape, or form. So we were protected. Okay. Does that make sense? Not that all of them are in use, but we own them. So no one can take those out from under us. Try to create a underground author group where people think that that's our group, or capitalize off of the work that we put in over the past year and a half on building this, and take it out from under us, because that has happened as well. Not to us, but to other people. So, and we know that people look at some of these things because we've had someone approach us to give up our Twitter handle, Tips on Tips. So we know that, you know, that they're out there, they're watching to see if we're renewing or whatnot. So
yeah. Are you looking at my my screen?
We can see it.
Okay, so here's a listing of all of our domain names here. 36. We got 36 domain names, and you can see that a year ago in June, when we were brainstorming the Author Underground, we hopped on and bought up a bunch of names because we wanted to make sure that we had the lock on these different variations. You can see we got authorunderground.com, underground author, underground authors, underground publisher, underground publishers, publisher underground, underground publishing, book marketing underground, underground book marketing, and that was that. So we were just, because we didn't know for sure, and obviously it took a little while before we kind of kicked it off. But we went on and we locked in a bunch of those variations of those names so that they were there and ready to go.
Yeah, and you can see that we bought some on the 10th, and then we thought of more, and so we bought more on the 11th.
Yep.
So.
And then some more on 4th of July.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, yep, that was that. And so the second point here is don't wait. Don't wait on this. Get it now. Do it tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Set up an account.
Yeah, it honestly, it is not expensive. I think to get your first one for the year, $299. And if you wait, 500,000, I've seen them for 5,000 to sell them back. So it's terrible. Yeah. Yeah. And if you're a big success, it'll be a lot more.
And the next point in here is don't overcomplicate this. Just because it's doing something on a computer doesn't mean it's that tough to do. We all set up email addresses at one point or another. And if you can set up an email address, then you can register a domain name. So it's simply a matter of going on and setting up the account, using your email address, and then kind of walking through. Most of it's self-explanatory. This stuff keeps on getting more and more user-friendly. All this online technology stuff, they keep on making it so that it's easier to implement. So it's a lot different than it was when we were first working on this stuff in 2012, 2013, and all that. So, so don't overcomplicate it. It's something you can definitely do, and just do it. So with that, it's like, where do you go to get your domain? So couple options. We have all of ours registered with GoDaddy. That's just who we started using years ago, and we've just stuck with it. There's another one called Namecheap, and then there's about a gazillion other ones that you can go to register domain names. Now, one word of caution is that with website hosting, many times they will try to, I mean, they'll give you a domain name for free for using their hosting service for the year, and that's sounds great, except I know from experience that it's tough to separate stuff with the technology. So I would rather, and this is just my word of recommendation, is keep your domain name registration separate from your domain hosting, separate from your email, a lot of that stuff as much as possible, or at least if it's on the same platform, then make sure that you know how to separate it. So our example would be that I think that, so it would go, yeah. So when we first were putting together some websites and stuff, I believe we had like everything with GoDaddy. So we had the domain name registered, and then we had the hosting service with them, for hosting it. And the website software was built right into it to create the website. And then the email service for the business email was also bundled into it. And then as GoDaddy was growing and changing, because all this technology stuff changes over time, they got out of doing email hosting. So we had to roll over into using Microsoft Outlook for our business emails, which in itself wasn't that bad of a thing, but it just created more issues, I guess. And then I know there was one other, I forget when it was, but I know we had a website tied in with hosting, and it was very difficult to get the two separated. I think it was one of the Weebly accounts that we set up, where that's one of the website hosting services that we've used plenty of times. And they have it where if you get the hosting for a year, you can get a domain name from them, which we no longer choose to do that. But a couple of years ago, we did that, and it was just really tough to get the name away from them to have it go to a different website. So so that's just the word of warning there, is if you simply use an account like Namecheap or GoDaddy and then just put your domain names there, you can tell the domain names where to point to, where to take people to.